let's we'll kind of get started here. Thanks to everybody who has joined us today. This is the second webinar that we will have hosted now in our new continuing education series, and we're looking forward to building on this. Each time we host an event like this, we'll be bringing in industry experts, innovators, people that have done things that matter and will continue to matter in this space. And today's no exception, as we've got a real cotton expert here, and Jason Thompson from Supima. And we'll look forward to diving in a bit to the dirt and some of the nerdy granular stuff related to cotton. Both to, I think, I don't know, sort of refresh our own knowledge of it, and for you, and as limited or as expansive as your cotton knowledge is, this will hopefully prove to be a worthwhile use of your time, as Jason's got a ton of information, not only just about Supima, but about cotton in general, and stuff that, you know, as much as you think you know, sometimes it's there's quite a bit more there, and new things to consider, I think, in any sort of purchase that uses a natural fiber. The first 30 minutes of this, we'll just do kind of a conversation between Jason and I. We'll talk a little bit about the various stages, what the difference of the cotton plants are, the different characteristics, growing conditions, what makes each of them unique or special. And then the last 30 minutes, we'll do a Q&A. And we did this last time, and it was quite popular. It's a chance for you out there to ask questions. No topic is off the table, anything at all. If we don't have the answer, we'll tell you, but most of the time we do. And certainly try to utilize our time with Jason here, because he is a wealth of information here, and someone that I've learned a lot from personally. A little background color on this. Supima was the very first call we made when we started Original Favorites. And this is back in like late 2015. We were tossing around the idea of launching this premium blanks company, and we wanted to do it around raw materials and building it around really premium raw materials. And Supima was one of the very first conversations we had, and then the first folks that we reached out to try and figure out how to best go about building the supply chain for it and to make products. And since then, you look kind of fast forward to 2023, and we still are making the exact same t-shirt that we started with, the 6-ounce American grown Supima cotton t-shirt, and nothing has changed on that. There's been some tweaks to fit over the years, but that's the extent of it. It's essentially the exact same t-shirt from day one. And I think that says a lot about things, because when you're building a product, you're tweaking, you're changing, you're adjusting, and that's very common in product development. But to actually start off and to use this exact same fabric, sort of knitted the exact same way from day one, is a testament to, I think, the raw material. It's exceptional. So anyway, Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Yeah, it's been a fun journey with you guys, and glad that we could help, and we could lend our assistance where we could. And yeah, it speaks to consistency, which is one of the main tenets of quality cotton crop.
Sure is.
And a quality product is that you want consistency, and the practices, the growths, the quality that comes out, and what is able to be converted into that final product, and it's consistency on the shelf, especially with color. As customers come back to buy more and more of the same item that they get used to. So happy to be here, and I hope it's informative.
Yeah, it will be for sure. Yeah. I'm looking forward to some refresher for myself. So let's start at the beginning here. Cotton plant. It's a plant, and it has its own sort of produce that it generates, I guess, or its own crop that it generates. But we can break it up into two categories, right? This is the best way I understand it. The two different types of major cotton plants that are out there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's best for us to focus on the cotton varieties in the U.S. because they're a microcosm of what's grown around the world. Yeah. So you have two main varieties. You have Gossypium barbadense, which makes up a small percentage of the cotton, which we call extra long staple cotton. That's a species. And then you have Gossypium hirsutum, which is 98% of cotton production in the US and most of the cotton found in the world. It's also referred to as upland or short staple cotton.
So let's talk about hirsutum for a minute. So this is the Latin term, I assume, that we're talking about here?
Yeah, it's the way to describe the species.
Okay, so the cotton that we're talking about, the 98% of the cotton grown in this country, which is again a microcosm of it globally, is short staple upland, as you called it. I've heard the term Kayla. That's one of the varieties, I think. Is that right? And there's others, I guess, among the.
Yeah, Kayla would lend more towards the Barbadense species, but that's more of a referential term. It's not extra long staple, but it has a longer fiber.
Okay.
So it's
in the first group, the hirsutum. Did I pronounce that correctly?
right.
This is the cotton that if you're wearing a basic t-shirt or sweatshirt and you sort of feel that fiber, that's the cotton that we would know as almost anything in our closet. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, your apparel closet and your linen closet, your towels, your sheets, things like that. It makes up the majority of what a consumer would have in their cotton products.
And the other 2% is this Barbadense, right? Is that how you pronounce it? And
yeah, Gossypian Barbadense. Yeah.
Barbadense. Where that cotton is the extra long staple, is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
And where does that cotton come from? Like, I guess, what cotton was grown in this country? What came in? Give me a little background on that.
Yeah, it's a complex background, but we'll try to do sort of the cliff notes here. It dates back to as early as 1790. That's really when the first crop of what we called Sea Island cotton was grown, and it was grown in Hilton Head, South Carolina. The Sea Islands off of Georgia were mainly where it was grown and cultivated. There was a little bit in interior Georgia as well. But that was the cotton that was the parent for most quality cottons and also the genesis of Egyptian cotton, because that made its way to Egypt somewhere in the early 1800s. Obviously, Egyptian cotton production became very important in the 1800s due to the Civil War outbreak in the US. But this cotton seed from Sea Island cotton, which is the parent of all extra long staple quality cottons, was blended by a Swiss Franco man named Jumel, who was the sort of the grandfather of cotton in Egypt. And cotton in Egypt was referred to as Jumel for a long time. And they took this Jumel and they blended it with a tree wool, and they created something called Ashmuni. And Ashmuni is the referential term for this first cotton, this quality cotton that was going to be planted in the Nile Delta. And that is the parent of basically all modern cotton production in Egypt. That seed made its way back over to America. And in the early 1900s, the USDA started a breeding program where they were going to take the original Sea Island seed and blend it with the Egyptian seed. And they did this in coordination with an Indian tribe in Arizona, the Pima Indians of Arizona. And they combined their techniques of cultivation with the USDA's techniques of seed breeding, and they came up with what they were going to call American Egyptian, because obviously for the terms and the fact that they wanted to blend these two growths, but they decided that it would be more aptly named Pima, and they asked the Indian tribe if they could call it Pima after their contributions to it. And it was given the name Pima at that time. This was primarily done not for textiles, but it was done actually for industrial use. It was a very strong fiber. It had a very high strength to weight ratio, and the war effort was going to be required a lot of domestic production of things like balloon cloth and tire cording, and actually plane fuselage. The Spirit of St. Louis plane is actually built out of American Pima. So it was a fiber that was used industrially. And the Goodyear Tire Company, anybody that knows Goodyear, Arizona, the reason that it's called Goodyear, Arizona is because the Goodyear Tire Company and the gentleman that ran it, Paul Litchfield at the time, moved into Arizona to cultivate Pima cotton for Goodyear tires and Goodyear products. So that's where the history sort of melds everything together. It was 1911 when they first started the breeding program, and probably 1912 when they had 1902 when they started the breeding program, and probably 1912 when they first cultivated a crop. And it sort of ran that way, like 300 bales, and then it just grew from there. Obviously, after we found a different way to and evolved our ways of making industrial things that needed to find a new application, and that's where textiles came into play. And it was a perfect fiber for textiles. It absorbs color well, it's super strong, and it's also very fine.
So, and Caroline, if you can help us visually here, there's a slide that we've got, and we're going to pass the slide around for you guys. You'll have it when we're done. You can download it and save it. It's got a bunch of the information here. Go to the next one where it shows the visual, the pictures of the two different cotton plants. So this is, I think, helpful for me, this one here. So on the left, Jason, is right, we've got Supima on the left and Upland on the right, and both examples here. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The Supima plant is a smaller plant. It also is not as white as an Upland. It's what we call a 3-lock bowl. So it has 3 concentrations of fiber, like a clover, whereas your Upland traditionally is a 5-lock bowl. So it has 5 concentrations of fiber. The Upland bowl is bigger. It really is. The Supima bowl, however, the fibers obviously, and we'll talk about the process of ginning and how we get the fibers off the seed, but you're going to actually get more fiber efficiently out of the Supima bowl, and it's obviously going to be longer, as you see in the image on the right. It is, on average 35 to 40% longer than an Upland fiber.
So, and in terms of the plants here, this is where I kind of come up with like produce examples, but this is the idea. When I was getting into this industry, I just thought cotton was cotton. Obviously we've got lots of different types of varietals of it. And it's like anything else, like heirloom tomatoes versus a cherry tomato. Like they're just different, there's different plants. And in this case, we've got a different, I guess, bowl composition or the general structure of the plant visually, but then also the product that it produces here. The Supima fibers obviously being an example of the extra long staple, and the others that we would know commercially would be like something like a Giza 45, or you mentioned Sea Island, or even Peruvian Pima, I guess, in terms of just the similarities of their the plant itself. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, Peruvian Pima was derived from the American Pima seed. It made its way over there in 1930, and by that time, well, I guess it was 1923, 1925, somewhere in that. By 1930, I believe it was 99% of Peru's extra long staple production was using the American Pima seed. So that's something that we've helped customers with as well, because there is an incorrect myth out there that Pima is a Peruvian genesis, which it isn't. It's an American original. Named after an American tribe. So that is basically something that we also try to drive home with our customers. But back to the plant, yeah, it's very much different. They need different growing practices. They need a different growing climate. They need a different growing season. The ELS season, the Pima season is longer. The fruit they produce, as you said, yes, that's what we call the lint, is different. And they grow differently. Pima is what we call a non-determinate species, which means that it will keep growing. It doesn't have a cap. If you keep feeding it water, it'll keep growing, and you would end up with a 7-foot tall leafy bush. So that's why water management and strict allocation of water and a desert climate is required for it, because you really need to trick this thing into thinking that it's dying. You need to cut it off at a certain height. You need to water starve it, and then it'll go into photosynthesis, which we all, have forgotten from high school, and start producing its fruit.
This is like wine, right? With your vines, you want your vines to struggle. They can't be overly comfortable to produce the best fruit. Yeah,
you got to starve them. Yeah.
So, and Caroline, can you pop the other slide that shows the sort of the breakup of the two different groups here? Yeah. So this is kind of what I was getting at. And Jason, if any of this is wrong too, be gentle. But we've got the extra long staple on the left. We've got the short staple on the right. This is kind of what we were just talking about. The 98% is in this short staple. The 2% is in this extra long staple, which has a couple of familiar phrases in here: the Egyptian cotton, the American Pima, Peruvian Pima, Sea Island, and this is sort of America we're using as the microcosm of the rest of the world. Our example is the American Pima, or in this case, Supima. And then the upland would be like our rest of our other varieties that are grown in the US. So the Supima, for those not familiar, is 90%, if I'm not mistaken, is coming from San Joaquin or California, sort of, and then some from West Texas and Arizona, a little New Mexico. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 4 states. It can't be grown. It just can't be expanded on or grown. You can't move it into the interior in rain-fed areas and expect to grow it and have any kind of efficiency of yield or for the plant to work. So it's grown in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and West Texas. 93% of it on average comes from California. It is a Central Valley crop. It's basically the only cotton they grow in the Central Valley right now for a myriad of reasons. They're very good at it. And also it is a premium fiber, and California's agricultural climate and their requirement is something that they can actually make money on. Farmers like to make money. So it is very advantageous for them to grow it. And basically at the prices that regular cotton trades at, there's no way that it would be beneficial for the farmers to grow that in California. It just wouldn't work.
So as far as the varieties we're talking about here, there's some differences between the way that we can sort of validate or verify this stuff, because these are all great. I love to hear about the different varieties. I've bought sheets in the past from Egyptian cotton, and I've bought stuff that's Peruvian Pima. Of course, I own a lot of Supima stuff now because I like everything around it. I like the way it's grown. I like that it's grown in the US. I like the regulatory bodies that help validate and at least do their best to keep things, I guess, between the mustard and the mayo as far as the process goes. But then also Oratane, who, if you were not, those of you that were not on our call, our webinar in January, we had Oratane sit in, Ben Tompkins from Oratane, and we had an incredible discussion about the forensic sciences behind this. And I think that might benefit for me to get a little refresher as to how we go about validating Supima, and then how that might differ from some of the other extra long staples out there.
Yeah, we're in a pretty advantageous position because we have such a finite production and such a finite area that we have to work with. It was very important to this organization, and has been since the inception of the trademark licensing program, that the origin of the fiber was paramount to being able to stand up any kind of identity or any kind of claims behind it. And we've used the tools that were always the best at our disposal. And for a long time, the best tools that we had at our disposal was basically an auditing process of paper-based ledgers. You could follow the purchase of it. The U.S. has a long-standing technical tracking system called the permanent bale identification. Each bale that's grown in the U.S., each bale of cotton actually has an RFID barcode attached to it, an ID, an identifier. And that number can get you to a spinning mill door. You can track the purchase, and it also is used to designate quality parameters and ginning origin of the cotton. But obviously, once it starts getting into the manufacturing stream and textiles, this is where the problems have persisted on identity and blending and origin. How do you prove it? And really, it's only in the last 5 or 6 years that there's been a technology like Oratane that has come to the forefront that you could apply to cotton, where you could actually get an origin. We have long been playing in the technical soup that is out there, basically on how you could identify a fiber. We were the first to try exogenous DNA marking, where you spray a fiber at the gin level, and then you test for the presence of that spray or that tag, which is one of the techniques that is used maybe in other areas or other fibers or other cotton growths. It didn't work for us because it doesn't get you origin. It simply gets you a presence and absence test of something that's been applied in the manufacturing process or at the gin. We always wanted to get to the dirt, and Oratane is the only solution that has allowed us to do that. And we won't go into the science because you did that with Ben, but we can forensically identify the origins of Supima. And we were the first cotton production on the whole to adopt Oratane. We set up the Supima fingerprint 5 years ago with them. and we just maintain it every single year. And going forward with our licensing program, it'll be now something that we fold into simply carrying the Supima trademark, which means that going forward, every Original Favorites t-shirt or product that bears the Supima trademark actually has been tested on a relevant basis by our organization and Oratane to ensure its authenticity and its origin.
So cool. So this is the kind of stuff, and I mentioned this one in our call in January with Oratane, but our first production of Supima teas, we went through the process, and I was very impressed. I was also relieved to see how thorough it was, because for us, I kept thinking to myself, everybody that's out there, if you're doing something that's unique and special to your industry and maybe not commonly done, and in this case, it was making Supima cotton products, I was worried that the big companies would go out there and find some way to like fudge something or to find a little loophole to be able to call their product with the same category that I was using to call our product, which was the Supima cotton t-shirt. And the first thing that Supima had us do was that we had to send proof of the purchase of the cotton. That's the paper side of it, right? Like we had to send over stamped stuff showing that we got the bales and it went to the mill or went to the yarn spinner, and then it went to the mill, and then it went to the factory, and they had to trace it all. So I was like, all right, this is great. So people are going to have a hard time getting away with this. But still, we're talking about products made at different parts of the world, and there's different people involved in the supply chain. There's money to be made if you can, be less than forthright on things. Well, we got the t-shirts completed. They show up, and Jason, I think it was you that sent us the email and was like, hey, you need to send your shirts in for testing. And I was like, what do you mean testing? No, we had paid for everything. It's our first big delivery. And I was like, no, we did everything. We got the paperwork. And at that point, my mindset was, we've checked the boxes, so we're set, we're okay. But this further testing was the Oratane testing, which was to validate the shirt through this forensic science. And I was a little nervous because you don't really know. I mean, you're told all these things along the way, but you never really know. And this was like the mindset change where we sent it in. Of course, it tested accurate for 100% Supima cotton, but it was this reassurance that, man, it's going to be hard for someone to go out there and fake this. You have a Supima tag on your product that you have to get through Supima, through one of the label makers, and then they have to validate the product and authenticate it through not only the paper trail, but also the sciences. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, this is like how it works. Well, it's not really how it works. It's how it works with Supima. It's not how it worked with Giza 45 or Sea Island or even Peruvian Pima, where you're sort of just going off of what you're told and some potential paperwork that might back it up.
Yeah, that's true. We're very we're very forward in stating that we don't provide certification. We don't use that word. We never have. We don't do certification. We are a licensing program. We license the identity of American Pima through the Supima trademark. The Supima trademark is a portmanteau that means superior Pima. It was coined by the farmers of American Pima when they set up the organization in 1954, because Pima is a referential term, and it is a protected Indian tribe name, so it cannot be trademarked and it cannot be used. So it's as general as the term Egyptian, or it's as general as even the term organic. It doesn't have any protections, or it's used as a referential term. It doesn't describe a specific thing. Supima is specific. Supima is only American Pima cotton, and it can be only American Pima cotton. And we use what we can, the tools in our toolbox, to make sure of that. Now, certifications have a problem because certifications are simply just a paper-based ledger system. Now, that is a good way to get to a understanding that purchases were made. But in textiles, always to the disadvantage and the advantage of the system, the spinning mill door, what we call the laydown, where the bales are broken open and they're put into the production of spinning yarn, that has always been the choke point, where how do you know what you're getting is actually what's being put into that yarn? And recently, with forensic science like Oratane, you can actually determine that. They have a way of not only testing for 100%, but they can identify blends. They can identify regions. They have a complete map of all the regions in the world that they can compare it against. That was very important to us. And now going forward, we've even gotten rid of the paper-based idea, and we're going to be working with a digital blockchain called Textile Genesis, which will actually be adding what's called a fiber coin to the yarn purchase made by any supply chain with Supima. And that digital identity will follow the yarn through all the processes and into the final product, on the shelf. And then Oratain will be testing along those supply chains for all Supima. And that is how we are going to license the trademark going forward from actually this month on. That's
terrific. This is the future of the consumer, journey, is to demand, ask for, and expect proof. As close to proof as you can get versus just the labeling of things or the claiming of things. We've got this phrase that you can't really call an item a luxury product unless you can identify the raw materials in there. That's what makes it a luxury product. It's like great food. You can't go to a great restaurant without them using and sourcing terrific raw materials to make amazing food. Michelin-starred restaurants, they're one of the things they're great at is finding great raw material to help start a dish, and that's the same thing with the apparel, at least from our perspective.
Yeah, you're a wine guy, so it's always been something that we've referred back to as anybody that understands the concept of terroir when it comes to champagne. Champagne can only be champagne. It's a specific, defined, and protected region. And the terroir not only describes the environment, but it describes the practices and the care and the production that went into farming those grapes and making that product. Supima is an ingredient label, right? That's exactly what we are. We are the champagne of cottons, and we've been calling ourselves that since the 50s. But be it whatever brand you're putting on it, original favorites, and underneath says Supima, it's the same as looking at a bottle of champagne from any of the houses that you want, be it Dom Perignon or Veuve, and underneath it says champagne. And that's what we want customers to sort of understand when it comes to Supima, is that we represent an identity, and we represent a group of farmers that are at the forefront of authenticity and responsibility and are making a premium product. So when you ask for Supima, you're asking for champagne.
Well, we certainly appreciate this insight. This is terrific stuff. I could talk for hours about this. I have with you at the Harvest Festival. And I think what I'd love to do is to try and see if some of our guests here can maybe chime in and ask some questions. And both any of us at Original Favorites, and I think Dave and Rachel will hop in here as well, and Jason from Supima. I think also I want to mention we're going to have a video that we're producing. It's going to come out, sort of a short form video, but a little bit about cotton. And it shows a lot of this stuff we talked about in visual form from our trip. We go to the harvest for the Supima cotton farmers. We have been there, and they shut it down for COVID. It's back up again. We were here this past year. It was terrific. And we get to know the farmers and their families. And you see the cotton fields, and you watch the cotton being not only taken from its raw form, but turned and ginned into a bale and then sent out. And there's all these interesting steps along the way that give you this amazing reassurance about what's going on. It's a neat situation, and we're trying to capture that via video, and we'll share it with all of you. That hopefully will help you better educate yourself and understanding the process as well. So that being said, Caroline, do you have the chat function open, or how do we do the Q&A here?
Hey, Pete, I'll jump in here as well real quick as Caroline's getting the questions going. My name's Dave Boger, also on the leadership team here at Original Favorites. Jason, thanks so much for participating today. As Pete said, we've been really looking forward to this. So if some of our customers are like me, where, okay, how do we get to some quick summaries on this to use this as valuable information to translate to your own specific customers? So I'll do just quick summary and then get to a good question for us to kick us off. So just a little history again. Original Favorites was the first licensee of a wholesale blank Supima cotton t-shirt. So that's something that we tout proudly. We were, again, the first licensee to be able to sell a wholesale blank Supima cotton t-shirt. The co-tenancy of Supima should hold a lot of water with anyone on the call. It's a lot of technical stuff being discussed today, but the co-tenancy of other licensees, Brooks Brothers, Levi's, Hugo Boss, Goop, people are selecting Supima for tons of good reasons, and it's all the stuff we're discussing today. But some of the value of what people are selecting Supima for is the extra long staple, which is just discussing fiber length. Staple is literally a portion of the cotton ball that gets stretched out, and it is the fiber itself. That is what extra long staple or extra long fiber stands for. This is the core tenant feature of what everyone is chasing for valuable cotton across the board. That's the difference between a short staple or short fiber cotton and extra long fiber. That long length and extra long length gives us several really critical things: strength, color retention, and product life cycle. So the stronger the fiber is as it goes into yarn and yarn into fabric, means the longer the product is going to have a longer product life cycle. So again, getting back to how do our customers translate value to their customers, why is Supima important is because it's a longer fiber, and that longer fiber gives it a smoother hand, better color retention, and longer product life cycle. The other half of what we're selecting Supima for is verification of supply chain and where we're getting this cotton from. So this is where I kind of kick it off into a question and to Jason and back to Pete. Why is verifying cotton important, and verifying your raw materials important in today's business environment and yeah, for your products?
You want me to start with that, Pete?
Yeah.
Yeah. From our perspective, it's very simple. You shouldn't or couldn't be standing up any kind of claims framework about the cotton, which has become extremely a forefronted marketing thing right now in a lot of apparel products, unless you can prove that the cotton that you are claiming to be there is actually the cotton that you are using. Verification and authenticity are paramount, especially as now federal laws are stepping into place about where and what you can say in regards to cotton. And you know, the train was a bit of a runaway one for a long time, and we're starting to put the brakes on it and try to pull it back into the station best we can, because marketing got ahead of the actual probability of authentication a long time ago. But now we're starting to see that it's becoming very, very important in the discerning consumer's mind, that they understand where the product's coming from and that the company can actually prove that it's the product that they say it is. So that's been our stance, and it's been secondary to us. The second point would be that it's paramount to us because we need to protect our farmers, and we need to protect the identity that they have put forward, and the fact that they have painstakingly grown this product, and they can't be misrepresented around the globe. It's very important. That's the mission of this organization. It hasn't changed since 1954. We are here to promote, protect, and grow the use of American Pima cotton the best way we can. It's, the way we've done it has evolved, but that's primarily our mission and will continue to be.
We discussed with Ben last time at Oratain, which is the genetic verifying organization that it partners with Supima, that is able to genetically verify that Supima is Supima, and it's testing.
Not genetics. Genetics don't get you there. It's forensic.
Forensic.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction. But it's in essence taking stuff that's happening at the soil level and then verifying that it was grown in this specific region is how we're tracing Supima specifically. So Ben had mentioned that the textile industry and natural fiber world hasn't kind of caught up or modernized quite the way that a lot of other industries have with technology in terms of how the raw material is purchased and passed through the supply chain. So enter in this great opportunity for people to apply new technologies. Again, what Supima is doing is absolutely at the forefront of anything related to raw material verification globally. But again, kind of what I'm saying here is there's a problem with passing the raw materials through the supply chain in terms of its lack of transparency. I think that's really what Supima helps verify here, right? And then when people take advantage of it, this is the problem we're seeing all over, the Uyghur region of China, and parts of India as well. And there's other places globally that this type of behavior happens, where there are people taking advantage of the system and either claiming a product is one thing and it is not, or getting away with being a bad actor and doing stuff that's harmful to people and or the environment. Again, the importance of verifying where your stuff is coming from. So Pete, chime in here too. I know you have some strong thoughts on this verification stuff.
I do, but I think it was great what Jason said in there. I think you mentioned the Uyghur region there. Egypt was all over the news. There were some really bad claims that turned out to be busted for that. I think my takeaway on it though is just simply that claims are claims. And Jason, what's the line you guys have used at the harvest in the past? Don't just tell us, prove it. Isn't that the kind of the general mindset, which is basically words are words, like let's see some stuff that's going to back up some of these statements that people are making. And I think that's where I sit on it.
Yeah, simply prove it. If you're going to be authentic, then be authentic. It exists, it's there. There's always going to be, cotton production in the world is a very valuable thing to the countries that produce it. It's jobs, it's livelihoods, it's all those sort of things. Comparative analysis doesn't really get you anywhere. And I do hope that the industry evolves from that we use this cotton and it's better than that. It's from a quality standpoint, just authenticate it and you use it from that point. But when you start demonizing cotton production around the world without even knowing where your stuff really comes from, then that becomes a problem on the whole, because it's a very valuable product, and there's a place for it everywhere. Supima is very simple. It's a premium, authentic, and rare cotton. So it's only going to play in a certain percentage of the marketplace. The rest of it has to come from somewhere. So if you're going to be making environmental claims, which are very complex, and water usage data and all these crazy things that get thrown around, you better be able to prove it, because that ship is coming. We've gotten away with far too much for far too long in the industry, and now you're going to have to prove what you're saying is true.
Love that. Well, there's some other good questions in here too. I'll toss out just to move through some of these because I think there's some ones that are worth certainly talking about. Amani has a couple questions in here. One though is to ask if there's any way to create recycled fabrics from Supima cotton scraps. Would it be different or similar to regular recycled cotton? Jason, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, or I should say before our call today. Can you jump in on this?
Yeah, it's very much doable, using the same technologies that are in place. A lot of the recycled cotton programs are stood up from cutting room scraps or sewing room scraps. Supima would be no different. They can plug into any of those systems, be it Recover or any of those technologies that use it. Raw material capture, or if there's been questions that have come that said, oh, is there any wastage that we can grab or any of those sort of things? No, there's not. We don't waste a single thing. We don't waste the seed. We don't waste the stalks. We don't waste the stems. We don't waste the leaves. And there's absolutely no fiber that isn't captured and sold. So there isn't an idea that there's a wastage factor when it comes to the raw material production. Even the Comer oil and the spinning waste, that has a market that it goes to. So those markets are well established. The cutting room scraps, I think, is a good opportunity. The technology at this point, I know that there is 100% recycled out there. If you could get to a point where you have 100% Supima recycled, it may tend to produce a slightly better product, just based on the nature of the fiber, but a lot of it is going to be blending. So what we're seeing at a lot is actually virgin Supima being blended with recycled cotton, because the Supima is just going to give that product so much more of a pop. Because we know that recycled cotton, short staple recycled cotton, it's not very, it's scratchy and it's not great, right? You can make a decent product. Yeah. So basically you see a lot of want of, let's get some virgin premium cotton in there like Supima, and then we can blend it with a recycled, and the product's going to really perform because it has Supima in it. So those applications are what we see more of in wanting. But the idea of recycled or recaptured Supima is a growing one.
I think the challenge Jason pointed out there is that we're 100% Supima, and so we would have to get it from the scraps from the floor. As Jason said, there's no wasted Supima to begin with. It's expensive. Supima, as you can imagine, by all of the information we went over, the cost per pound of Supima is significantly more than upland cotton. It's why 2% of it is what's used. It's not a commonly available item for the fact that the consumer demand has not been there across the board. We service a small percentage of the market that's focused on premium products, like really premium. And that's why we use it, and it's the best cotton we can buy. That being said, on the recycled side, we do have like an opinion on that if we're recycling a product, that means it's lived its life. In most cases, it's usually a crappy product that we're just trying to like reuse the same crappy product instead of putting it in a landfill, because that's a problem right now. Fast fashion's created this disaster of a situation of garments everywhere. Well, to me, if we just buy it better to start, we don't have these problems. Like, we can keep it for longer. Like Dave talked about, the Supima fiber is so much longer, it's stronger, it's softer, it's smoother, it holds color better. The t-shirts I have from our first batch, I have t-shirts from 2016, 2017. They're still in my drawer. And I have eradicated almost every other t-shirt I own because I do like ours the best. I'm biased, but I'm also 45 years old and I like to be comfortable. And that's a really nice t-shirt. So I wear them every day, but they hold up unbelievably well. And I think that, to me, is a more sustainable approach than constantly trying to reuse stuff that's crappy to begin with. Sorry for my language.
Yeah. It's the cost per wear analysis, isn't it? I mean, if you buy something that's $12 and you wear it once, or you buy something that's $120 and you wear it 10 times, the cost per wear is the same, isn't it? Yeah. Right. What you're doing though by buying the $120 product is you're keeping a product out of the landfill.
Yeah, that is an accurate statement.
I think the industry has a lot of opportunity to make up some ground on the recycled fibers or recycling, scrap room floor scraps, or sample room or production room scraps, etc., or taking finished garments and recycling them. But I think really it should be broken into, it's either repurposed versus recycled. If it's recycled, it's spun into yarn and put back into another t-shirt garment, right? But I think probably the better opportunity, if we're focused on quality, is this is repurposed and put into other stuff. So taking tees and it getting converted into insulation, fluff into installation for other products. But yeah, it's hard because if we're, Supima naturally on its own has such the unique property of the long fiber, extra long fiber, that blending it with something that's been reprocessed and by nature has been cut and shortened in terms of fiber length as a part of the recycling process, it's going to pull down a little bit of the quality. So definitely a challenge for us there, but doesn't mean we shouldn't look at it.
Some other ones we've got here. Tim Gibson wrote isotope testing. Not the question, but just a statement here.
I think he was saying, he was correcting me, which was when I was saying genetic testing, it's actually isotopic and molecular testing.
That's right. Ben talked about that. That's right. In our webinar with him.
Well, it's part of it, right? Isotopes are important to the geographical location because of sort of the elevations and things of that nature, but you need the forensic trace elements to hone in on it. So it's not strictly isotope testing. Really what hones in and what gets you where you need to go is the trace elements that they can identify. And I think he probably said 35 or 40 trace elements that they test for that the fiber absorbs. And really the best way to describe it is that you've got these 35 or so trace elements, and you place them on a curve. And when you stand in a certain spot or you stand in a field, there's going to be X amount of each one of them. And then you basically can cross the street into another field, and that's going to slightly change. There's going to be less of this one, more of that one, less of this one over here. So you can actually create a section by section profile and fingerprint. And that's basically where we got to with organic, is that we can actually singular do a farm. And it's the most powerful traceability system on organic that exists, simply because organic is a set of practices. It's not a fiber. The fiber is cotton. It's simply a set of practices that have been employed. So the best way that you could ever identify organic is simply by being able to identify the farm that it came from, and then being able to audit the practices that were put into that farm. And Oratane can get you farm specific based on the fact that they can hone in on the trace elements that are in that geographical location only. They've been able to do it with salmon, like salmon farms that are fed from the same river system. They can see the slight differences. It gets that powerful. So it's a really important tool. It's a costly tool, but one that we think is very important to authenticity.
Another question here about, it said at the beginning of the live conversation, we talked about cotton being mixed with something. Was it wool? Cotton can be blended with lots of different fibers. Typically, well, with our products, we're 100% Supima on all of the teas. We don't blend it with anything. The main reason we don't is because you're taking something very premium, and when you blend it with something that's not as premium, you have degraded the quality across the board, the uniformity of it. So additionally, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in order to have the Supima tag on our products, Jason, they need to be 100% Supima. Is that right?
The cotton portion needs to be 100% Supima, yeah. There's obviously, because of technical applications and the fact that there's performance blends and higher end synthetics that actually play well with Supima, your silks, merino in some cases, because merino is a wondrous natural fiber. It does a lot of good. We look at blending the same way we would look at anything else on an individual basis. And what it needs to do is actually add value to the product. It can't be a cost-cutting measure. That's the main thing that we look for. So whereas a silk or a higher end synthetic like a Tencel or something like that would be looked at as a value add, when there's like a blend of polyester and Supima, then that's going to get red flagged, because why would you put polyester in it? And it needs to be applicable to what the product is supposed to be. But we start with 100% Supima, and then when the blends are brought forward, we look at them on a case-by-case basis.
So I thought maybe this person was referencing cotton at one point was called tree wool, which is just a kind of generic description of, since the plant could grow for several years into a large shrub or a small tree, that people referred to it as tree wool. And then we modified it and changed it and started growing it differently, right? Which turned it into an annual plant almost, where we're replanting the.
Yeah, that goes back all the way to Christopher Columbus. He discovered tree wool. But yeah, that would be the barbadense species, because it can basically be a tree. If it's left alone and fed and everything like that, then it would simply grow into a tree. Jumel, we believe, was found. Jumel found a cotton tree in a yard near Cairo. That's kind of the historical reference to that. And they started pulling these fibers and finding out that they could do things with them.
So on this, what makes Supima as well? I saw a question here that says, hey, can we use Supima in our product descriptions? 100%. So underneath the Original Favorites license, being a licensee, anyone who buys our products can then use it on their own websites and marketing materials, etc., any social. And if you buy our t-shirts and it's a Supima t-shirt, you can call your products that you're making on your own branded products Supima as well.
Yeah, I think they already carry the labeling, don't they?
Yeah, we have the hang tags on the product, and it's on the product description as well.
Yeah, and we have the traceability on the blank itself. So
yeah, it's a big thing. Dave mentioned that it is a big deal to be able to use that term, because there are some global brands, very recognizable ones, that have used and continue to use it, because it has power with consumers. They know they're paying for something premium.
Yeah.
Jovanka has a question here, longtime customer. Thanks, Jovanka. She said, thanks for providing these amazing blanks. Quality's first class. I wanted to know if you have a carbon footprint schematic info that pertains to a hoodie or Pima cotton tee. Dave, can you chime in on that a little bit?
Say it one more time.
She asked if we have a carbon footprint schematic. You've been working on the carbon footprint side of things. Do you have some information there?
Yeah, we do. We started first on the sweatshirt. So yes, we're going to be releasing a bunch of information through 2023 as by product. We've gotten down to what is the specific CO2 emission by individual unit. So this is complex stuff, takes a long time. We've been working on it for over, it's now our third full year. Also with another third-party verifying organization called EcoAct based in England. So all stuff that's going to come out, but until it's fully baked, we don't, as our core tenet of Original Favorites is, let's make sure we get it right before we release it to our customers and put it out there to the universe. But stuff we're working on, and yeah, we're excited about it.
I should mention too, Dave shouldn't undersell it too much. He said he's been working on it for 3 years. They literally have been, and it's not free. This is something that we put time and money into, and it's important for us as to, in all aspects of our production, we try to dig in, ask questions, and hopefully get answers that we want. And if we don't get the answers we want, then that's when we have to make some changes. And sometimes you have to be brave to ask those questions. And I think Dave and Rachel, who have worked on this side of things, have been terrific at it and really like continuing to push the ball forward.
On our SDGs, or one of our sustainability goals is to be carbon neutral as a company by the end of 2023, to offset our specific company emissions, which is different than product emissions. So it's pretty layered and complex, like all things out there that that matter, but stuff we're working on.
Any other T questions here? I understand recycled cotton is simply shredded cotton formed back into thread. However, the integrity is much less. With the discussions of a potential recycle program with Supima, is there a current concern of quality from that standpoint? I'll answer yes, unless we have some real assurances. Jason could probably answer that differently or potentially build on that.
Concern of quality?
Well, I would be, they were asking, is there concerns of quality on a recycle program if it's formed back into thread, if it's blended with something else, if it's not 100% Supima, to be able to get 100% products to then recycle, it's not like it's widely available in the marketplace to begin with.
Yeah, and that's a fair question, because then you're talking about dilution of the brand, wouldn't you? Because if it carried the trademark and the quality was inferior because it was produced with the recycled program, then you could see that could be hurtful. That's a fair question. We think it's an important process to investigate, but we would be probably pretty adamant in saying that it needs to be identified as a recycled Supima program, so it can be differentiated from the trademark. We are happy to stand up different identities on our digital blockchain, be it organic or recycled or upcycled or regenerative or any of those sort of things, to help even further identify and silo the different ways that Supima has been used. So fabric content labeling would be key, saying that it's recycled 40%, 60% Supima, something like that, that we would want to see, so that the consumer understood that it wasn't 100% virgin Supima.
Jonathan, that's a good question here. New quote cotton nerd here. I love it. Curious what your thoughts are on hemp as a textile, and specifically with t-shirts, and how it compares to Pima cotton. And then you put comma organic cotton. Jason, you want to do that one?
Hemp itself it's a very coarse sort of feeling with it. 100% hemp shirts, I mean, you got to soften the crap out of those, as far as I'm concerned. They're blended with cotton a lot just to soften them up. Hemp blends with Supima very well in that sense, because now you're going to have a premium cotton and you're going to have hemp, which you want to be part of your story. You want to support the hemp industry, which I completely understand, and am for. But I haven't really seen an application where you wouldn't have a more premium product if you combine the two. So blending with hemp is definitely something that we see, and we see the hemp at the lower levels. So maybe like a 60-40 blend or something like that. Organic cotton, organic, from where, organic grown where, organic how, it's cotton. So it'd be the same kind of answer. If you blend it with a more inferior cotton, whether it's grown organically or not, it doesn't improve the quality one way or another. It's simply just a farming practice on how the cotton was grown. One could argue that organic is going to be a little bit harder of a cotton to keep consistent with quality, but again, that's going to depend on where you're growing it and the factors under which it was grown. That's all.
There's another one here about the dyes. Good question here on the dyes. So what kind of dyes are used over the dyeing process? We have a company that sort of certifies dyes, Okotex, which we have a certification that's on our website that kind of talks about that a bit more. I'm not an expert in dyeing. However, I know no formaldehyde or toxins are used in the dye process per their requirements. And if you want, maybe Rach, if you could tag or send an email or a note back, Caroline, maybe with a link to where we could find information about the dye process on our website. For those not familiar with it, we have a pretty robust sort of set of pages on the website under resources, under sustainability. There's a ton of information there about the farms, about the factories, fair wage, all of the information that would be of interest. Those go without saying. I feel like if people are leading with the most basic of certifications, that's like you're not even joining the party at that point. You're operating as a normal human being, hopefully, and yes, hopefully people are taken care of. That kind of stuff is so lowbrow from our perspective, only in that we of course do that stuff. What we're talking about beyond here is so many steps beyond some of those entry level certifications or like calling cards. And if companies are leading with some of that stuff, I feel like that's a red flag for me. Like that means you're just operating as a company. You've done nothing outside of standards for a few things and getting a couple of like certifications for the website. Sorry if that sounds rude or crass, but I see it all the time with the greenwashing that goes on. It's just rampant in our industry, and it's sort of moved into this luxury washing category now too, where sort of people just sign up for a few things like Better Cotton Initiative or whatever they might be, and they just slap it on the website and boom, we're eco-friendly, we're doing all the right things. And I think that's a really tough position if you know much about the industry or you've spent time in the industry. That kind of stuff to me it's sort of like it's kind of like a joke, because I feel like you're not doing much. You're sort of just bare minimum to try and like exist.
You're just checking the box, right?
Yeah.
And if you're just using it, that's the only thing you're doing it for, to make sure your customers know you're doing this checking the box activity. That's not how we operate. It's not how we built the company.
Yeah, we come across passionately there because we do care. So sorry, I forgot.
Well, it matters, right? It matters where the stuff come from. Is my whole point here on the, where verifying the cotton is coming from is, if you don't know, you can get cotton that came from the region in China where they have forced labor camps and genocide. I mean, this is not, it's real stuff. So it's terrible stuff to talk about, but it's the reality for folks out there, and getting products from places that you don't know the origin of the raw materials. You can run into this, and it's not just bad for people, it's also bad for your business, potentially too, on the risk management side of things.
Yeah, a quick Google search will find you some really interesting information about that. The Uyghur region recently just got fully exposed as up to 90% of the cotton coming out of China is coming from that region through scientific forensics testing, which you might recall from our last conversation.
Created the Uyghur bill, right, which is banning products coming in from China from this area, which they're able to now, with the help of Ortain, tell that the product has come from this region and it's getting stopped at the port. So it's not just, hey, it's terrible for these human beings, it's also can shut down your business.
And one of the largest blank suppliers in the US just got busted for it pretty badly.
Because ending on a high note, right?
I think a good question.
I'm
trying to be conscious of Jason's time. Jason, we could keep you here for hours because you're such a wealth of information here. Let's pick one last one. Rachel, Caroline, Dave, you guys have any other questions in here we want to give a chance to get an answer?
Yeah. Ted, thanks for your question. Ted was wondering how much a Supima license would cost outside of Original Favorites, so if his business wanted to pursue one separately.
Depending on where they're at in the supply chain, they simply have to source Supima. Supima's license is a process forward license. So it actually is built into the yarn that is designated for a Supima product. So if you are a brand or a retailer and you designate Supima, then the fabric, if it is carrying Supima designation or being sold as Supima, then the cost is included in the cost of the fabric. You simply, as a brand or retailer, need to be on the Textile Genesis system so you can link your supply chain. And that's basically it. We're trying to make it as easy as we can for the end user. The work's being done at the beginning with the mills.
Awesome. Well, I want to, on behalf of Original Favorites and all of our clients that joined us today, thank you so much, Jason, for sharing this information and your time with us. Anybody that has questions in here that weren't answered, we'll try to type them out and send them back to you. You guys can always schedule a call with us on Calendly if any of our clients have additional questions they want to have follow-up on. And we're so excited to have this opportunity to do this with you. We look forward to the next one, which we'll try to keep them every couple months or so, but we've got a great roster of upcoming guests that we're excited to share.
Thanks. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully we helped educate and inform your client base and your customers. And if there's anything we can do from our end, they can reach out to us.
You guys are great partners. Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
Bye.